Today I'll be making the Pokemon game I always wanted as a child, a massive open world with real-time combat, wild Pokemons walking around, rideable Pokemons, an evolution system, and much more. For this huge project I'll be using Unreal Engine as well as Blender and Mixamo for 3D modeling. Let's start by making the main character model. One thing I always wanted as a child was a Pokemon game protagonized by Ash, so that's what I went for. Because my modeling skills are, well, not on point, I decided to use a free model that I downloaded online. Next, I gave him a nice skeleton and used Mixamo to make him move, jump, throw the Pokeballs, all that stuff. The textures glitch in Mixamo, but don't worry, they will look just fine in Unreal. I then imported everything and went on to making the code for it to move by copying everything for the example character. Okay, he already moves, but oh, this looks amazing, I love it. Next I decided I was gonna make the combat system, so I got a Mewtwo 3D model and imported it to Unreal. Next I gave it a little AI so that it would move around and attack the player when it sees him, which looked kinda terrifying by the way. I then went to the Unreal Engine marketplace and downloaded some free particle effects, like this energy blast, which I really liked. Now when the Mewtwo gets angry, he can shoot these energy projectiles that target the player. With this example in mind, I proceeded to make many more attacks for this Mewtwo as well as many other Pokemons. I obviously can't make all the 1025 Pokemons, so I started with these 10. Now I had to make it so that you can actually control the Pokemons in real time, but before that, this grey prison that is the default Unreal Engine map was getting kinda boring, so I went back to the Unreal Engine marketplace and found this natural landscapes pack that I really liked and used it to build the new map from scratch by randomly dragging my mouse around. I don't know about you, but I think this really took the game to another level. Now that we had a good map, I started to work on finishing the combat system. I made it so that at any time you can throw a Pokeball and spawn any of the Pokemons you have collected to that point. After choosing a Pokemon, you'll stop controlling Ash and actually become the Pokemon you chose. Most wild Pokemons won't attack Ash, but they will attack any Pokemon that is controlled by the player. I made the attack system similar to many MMOs, where you can choose the ability you want to use from your toolbar and left click it to use. If you manage to defeat a wild Pokemon, you can go back to being Ash and try to capture it. If the Pokeball fails, however, the Pokemon will wake up and quickly knock Ash out, giving himself time to escape. If your Pokemon is the one defeated, it will go back to your inventory and you'll have to heal it before using it again. The main character is Ash, so obviously your started Pokemon will be Pikachu. The next thing I wanted to make now were the rideable Pokemons. I downloaded 6 new Pokemon models, 2 for moving on land, 2 for flying and 2 for swimming, and they made it so that you can spawn one of these Pokemons and instead of controlling them you will be able to ride them when you get close. These Pokemons will still be able to fight, but you should probably avoid this because if these Pokemons get knocked out, yeah, things ain't looking too good for Ash. The next thing I worked on was the evolution system. In the original games, Pokemon just switched between their current form and the evolution they were becoming. However, I wanted to do something more epic that still wouldn't require me to simulate real-life evolution. I decided to give each Pokemon their own unique particle effects related to their evolution. For example, when this Charmeleon becomes a Charizard, he gets into a giant tornado of fire. Very cool. By this point, the game was already a pretty nice proof of concept, but it still wasn't looking like an actual game. So I downloaded a map of Pallet Town and started recreating it in Unreal Engine. I made the interior of Ash's house as well as Professor Oak's lab where Ash meets Pikachu for the first time. I also made 8 gyms that I distributed into random villages that I also made. The idea is to make the game similar to Breath of the Wild, where you can go to the temples in whichever order you prefer. The final place I added is a secret Team Rocket base that will have a greater difficulty level than the rest of the game. Here you will be able to get a chance to get the Master Ball and capture Mewtwo. By this point the map was basically completed. However, there was still a big problem. You see, the real-time battle system works just fine in a massive open field, but inside a thin corridor, yeah, you can't even see anything, it's terrible. To solve this issue without having to design a completely different battle system, I decided to make each location have just a few mandatory battles. These battles would take place on a massive battle arena inside of each building, and they would work similar to the ones in the games. Now the general structure of the game is completed, but I still had one tiny problem. How am I gonna design 8 different gyms and a diverse wildlife with just 12 Pokémons? The answer is I won't. I calculated that I would need at least 4 Pokémons for each gym, as well as 15 more Pokémons to be found in the wild. That's 47 new Pokémons that I will have to make, animate and code. This is gonna take a while. While making the Pokémons, I decided to also make just a few, 3 legendary Pokémons that will appear only once you've beaten the Pokemon League. I also made them pretty overpowered, so you'll probably need Mewtwo to defeat them. While testing the game, I realized that even running around can sometimes feel kinda slow. I thought the rideable Pokémons would solve this issue, but you can't really access them until later on in the game. So, inspired once again by the original games, I decided I would add some normal means of transportation. Most Pokemon games have bikes, so that was an obvious addition. However, many games also have cruises like the SSN. I couldn't find a good way to make these modern machines fit well with the primitive feeling of the rest of the game. However, I did like the idea of a fast travel method, so I added the option to teleport between cities which gyms you've already beaten. Another thing I was yet to add were the Pokemon Centers, where you can heal your Pokemon, and the Pokemon Daycare, where you can leave your Pokemon to let it gain experience points as time goes on. I also added the store, where you can buy a variety of items from different games depending on which village you are buying in. By this point the entire game is finished, however I did keep one very special thing I wanted to add for last. At the very beginning of the game I had Professor Oak ask you for your ideal Pokemon team. You see, when you complete either Pokemon Black or White, you will gain access to a final battle against a Pokemon Master stronger and scarier than the rest. Red, the character you played as in the first Pokemon game, who will even fight with the same team you had when you played the game. This is one of the coolest moments in gaming history, and I wanted to recreate it in my game. So if you manage to beat the league, you will be able to find him in this mountain, patiently waiting to be challenged.